So we have three great speakers today, three great panelists today. As real estate agents, as residential real estate agents, the elephant in the room is always commercial. We get asked a lot of times about commercial. We try to navigate it. We try to see kind of the different roads and the avenues we can go. But at the end of the day, this is going to show how incredibly different commercial is than residential. And Andrew, since he's been taking the helm over at the commercial office, the new broker manager, has been nothing but a resource to not only myself, but to the agents here in Niskayuna. A lot of times when people ask me a commercial question, I don't know the answer. And now I have this tremendous resource in Andrew Mangini, who is patient, helpful, thoughtful, and knows more about commercial real estate than any other human being I've ever seen in my entire 39 years on earth. So we also have Jesse and Antonio Johnson, who two are the rising stars in the commercial world. Antonio, how long have you been in the commercial industry?
So believe it or not, it's going to be, I think, my 5th year this year. Yeah, which is crazy.
And Jesse, same question for you.
I am almost celebrating my 1 year as of I think 2 or 3 days, I think, at this point. I got to check with Andrew, but we're close.
Oh, last month. You started in December.
I was December?
Yeah.
So, yeah, you're 14 months in. So you're no spring chicken anymore.
Been a year and some change.
So it begs me to ask the question, which I'm sure everybody in this call is wondering: why did you get into commercial? Why?
I think for me, it was really two things. The first being the opportunity to be a part of an industry that has such a profound impact on communities. I grew up in Amsterdam. Route 30 in the past 20 years has really changed the life of residents in Amsterdam, and just seeing that and being able to be a part of that process was extremely appealing to me. I was also a business major, and always kind of had a business sense. So I was always drawn to kind of just dealing with business-minded people, and having the opportunity to help businesses out really attracted me to it as well.
Awesome. And Jesse, same question for you. Why commercial as opposed to residential?
Yeah, I think to piggyback on what Antonio was saying, I didn't know that about Antonio, but that's literally why I got into business as well. I started actually from a different angle. I started with property management, and I did student housing at the time, and when I was in Binghamton, and I saw the profound impact that this one specific building had on the entire downtown street, and bringing new businesses to the area, and seeing the impact that building had. It's like, oh, this is pretty cool. I can actually do something for the good of the community through real estate. So long story short, I did property management for a while. Always super interested into the commercial realm, and got the opportunity when I came to Albany to do that. This is a budding area. The capital region is a budding area for this kind of thing. And it seemed like the most natural step. And, I guess to be honest, the residential side of it, I bought my house through a residential agent. And the thing that turned me off the most about it was how everybody was a real estate agent. The aunts, the uncles, the grandmothers, everybody had to tell the agent how to do their job. And that was like one of those things I'm like, I can't do this. It was very tough for me to navigate that side of it, where I was like, if the numbers work, the commercial side makes sense to me. That's where I was at.
Yeah, and that the old father in the room that knows more about real estate than you, because he bought a house in 1967, never goes away. And we have to learn how to navigate that. So it's
very tough. My hat's off to all you guys to do that. That is very, very tough for me.
Andrew, how long have you been in commercial real estate? What got you in your start? And where do you go from here?
Going on 7 years. I had a couple of years prior. As you may or may not know, my mother, Pat Mangini, works out of the Niskayuna office.
She sounds familiar.
Has been in real estate for, I think, about 40 years or so. I've grown up in the business, seeing how the residential side works. And frankly, the reason I chose commercial was to not be on the weekends, not work on the nights and weekends. And it's somewhat of the opposite. We work, the business hours, Monday through Friday, take weekends off. I sometimes there's showings for good showings, but for the most part, take weekends off. and there's a lot less emotion that goes on with commercial deals. So it's, you know, it's just it's just a path that I decided to go down.
Every residential agent's ears and eyes perked up when you said not emotional and you don't work weekends. So you might have an influx of new people that want to venture into commercial based on that.
We are looking for new brokers. So.
I see Nicole Clark is like,
Yeah.
All right, so let's get into it. And the first question, I asked a bunch of the agents. I put it out there. I got emails from agents. And the first one is the differences between the MLS systems. I know you all use CoStar, we have Paragon, and then there's a CIREB. I know that either Antonio, you are going to do a screen share to show us that, but why does the property show for $1? It shows for sale for $1 on there. Can you speak to that? And then while you're doing that, do a little screen share of your MLS system and let's navigate that.
Sure. The whole $1 thing, I think a lot of the times, what could be for many reasons, but I think major reason is the owner doesn't want to put a price out there and just wants it to seem like it's negotiable. I think CIREB is doing their best now to kind of get rid of that as much as possible because it is a problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen and show you predominantly what we use in commercial for.
Let me stay on that first, Antonio. So the dollar really is, the agent and brokers, they're required to put in the amount. Sometimes you'll see that dollar because the property is listed for lease, not for sale. If it is for sale, then, you know, we have been, you know, CIREB has been cracking down, as Antonio mentioned, and is no longer allowed to just put $1 on there. But if you see, we have to put something in the sale side. So if you see $1, it's most likely for lease, not for sale.
Makes sense. And what is this? I see Jeff Bezos, but what are you showing here, Antonio?
So this is a platform that we in commercial belong to and pay for called CoStar. It's just much more user friendly, has a lot more in terms of data than CIREB or Global or than any of the other platforms that we've mentioned. You can check for lease, for sale. We can pull sale comps, lease comps. And the nice thing about it is it'll even go into market analytics for either markets or sub-markets. So I'll do just a quick. So if I have a client that's looking for, say, an industrial property, 25,000 square feet to 100,000.
And is this membership based? It's not like a Zillow where it's free to all, but you have
so this actually costs each agent in the office. Off the top of my head, CoStar and LoopNet is about $350 a month to be a subscriber to.
Per agent?
Per agent. The office picks up about half of that fee, though.
So, you know, our MLS.
So it's still, and these come off of your commission. So if you're not doing business, you know, $150 a month adds up quickly.
And Scott Cross asked the question, are all the properties available through this app? I would imagine it's syndicated from our global MLS or wherever it is and syndicated directly to here.
Exactly. Yep, that's right. And it pulls from other markets as well, other marketing platforms. So it's really everything in one place, which makes it a lot easier than going to each dedicated, local MLS platform.
And has anybody ever gone on to CIREB? Anybody ever seen it? It is the ugliest, most cumbersome looking platform you could ever imagine. This seems like it's extremely user friendly, where it has the map almost, and I don't want to say the Z word, but it almost has that Zillow type feel where it's
very similar,
super user friendly and super easy to navigate.
Absolutely.
So let's say hypothetically, I have a client that's looking for a retail space. Could we just kind of walk through that process of how you're going to find that, how you're going to find either a lease or a purchase, and you know what it looks like in terms of ability to purchase it or finance it, and then the steps for that?
So do you want me to show you on here how I would do it? So let's say, I guess hypothetically for lease, let's say you have a retail tenant that's looking for say 2,500 to 5,000 square feet. And let's say.
And is that the common space for, let's say, like a barber shop or like tattoo shop, or, I'm just trying to think of things that are most likely in our avenue as residential agents that we get called on. I highly doubt we're ever going to get called on a industrial property for 30,000 square feet, but a friend that wants to open up a small little boutique or a small little restaurant, is that kind of the norm?
I'd say that this is a little bit larger than for like a barber shop or salon space use. I think you're probably closer to the range of 1,500 square feet at the most. So I could take this down, let's say 1,000 square feet to 2,500 square feet. So I could come in here and say they want to be in Schenectady. I have a bunch of potential options, and I could filter it even more. If they need parking, a certain amount of parking, I could filter that out. I would definitely recommend this building right here. There's a great listing agent on that one.
Let's open that up. Let's take a look and see what you have.
So this is 426 to 430 Franklin Street in Schenectady. Mixed use building. Clients bought it a couple months back. If you've driven past, it's right in the corner of J Street and Franklin Street. They're putting a brand new facade on the building. Floor to ceiling glass windows. It's going to be downstairs retail, upstairs office. A lot of it is already in the letter of intent stage.
And what is that?
So letter of intent is the first thing that is sent across from a potential tenant to a building owner, and it kind of just lays out in a non-binding way the terms and what they would offer to lease at that building. So that's really the first step.
So it's essentially like us giving I'm trying to make the correlation between your business letter of intent and what we do. It's essentially the same as us calling the listing agent and saying, hey, listen, verbally, we'd like to offer this. Your letter of intent is more or less a non-binding agreement. It's like, hey, listen, is this enough to get the ball rolling, or are we just completely, out of line?
Exactly right. Exactly right.
So let's just walk through this. And what are you looking for? What are you trying to see? What are you going to show to clients? Like, how did you value this property? And then if you were working on the buy side, how would you navigate that in both terms?
So this one is for lease only. So this is not a purchase opportunity. But we established a lease price by looking at comparable leases in the Schenectady market. So we're at $16 a square foot. And that's really just a base rent number. Because it's new construction, there's going to be additional fees in regard to whatever specific build out potentially that the tenant would want. So if there's a hair salon use, you're going to need a lot of plumbing. You may need maybe a little office space. So on top of this $16 a square foot, you're also going to have maybe some build out costs that the owner of the building might roll into that $16 a square foot to get you at your final number.
So essentially like a new construction where the base price is $300, but all the updates could bring you up to $350 to $400.
Right. Exactly.
That's awesome. And how did you come up with that $1,600 price? I know you said comps, but what was the system that you used? And obviously a lot of it is a feeling after doing this for a while, certain pockets, certain areas, certain neighborhoods demand and command a certain price, but where did you get the $1,600 and how much would the max be if they were to do some build out?
So it's $16 per square foot is the price. That's $1,600.
Wow.
So that's $16
per square foot expensive.
Per square foot. Yep.
Per square foot per year.
Yeah.
Per year. So it could be a lot more expensive if, say, a medical tenant comes in and wants a sophisticated build out where they need extra insulation for x-ray rooms and a lot of plumbing. So it's really dependent on the tenant and the end user. But in determining that $16 a square foot, it really is just market figures and what will get people in the door to get a conversation started.
And after they have the letter of intent, let's say your, seller, or whatever you want to call them, your client agrees to those terms. What is the next step in the process? We have our processes for residential. What is and I guess we could just say the most basic and most common series of events that leads from letter of intent to the closing table?
Yep. So once a letter of intent is agreed upon and signed by both parties, the letter of intent will usually be shipped off to the legal counsel for the landlord, and the landlord will put together a purchase and sale agreement. Then the attorneys will go back and forth on language in the, on the lease agreement, not purchase and sale agreement, on the lease agreement. Attorneys will go back and forth on language in the lease agreement. And then once the lease is signed, construction and a kind of a schedule for construction and build out will be set. And in that, you'll be able to figure out when fixed rent comes in and different things like that.
And then as far as like the town goes and permits, whose responsibility is that?
It's really per each deal. It's kind of negotiable, but a lot of the times we're seeing that the landlord and tenant will work together on a lot of the governmental approvals. So say for signage, you can get a permit, they'll go together. Really, it's kind of a team effort for all the governmental approval stuff.
All right. And let's pivot to Jesse. Jesse, do you work predominantly with people that are looking to purchase or lease, or the purchase that are selling, looking to sell?
Well, it's a bit of a mixed bag, really. I do have quite a bit in the portfolio that's for lease. We also have quite a bit of stuff for sale as well. I started off with leasing, because it seemed like the most natural progression in my career. Start off with leasing. That's what I was doing for property management. I got the concept down pretty well. But to piggyback on the leasing side of it, there's a couple different leases that you'll come across on these things. You're going to come across your gross leases as well as your triple net leases, as well as like some other stuff, that Antonio was touching on as well. So with the gross lease, it's essentially that, you're paying your rent and your utilities. Straightforward, from a leasee standpoint, it makes sense. You're starting a small business, it's easier to budget. You got it all figured out. You're paying $1,600 a month in rent, and then your utilities. Easy to budget. It's clean. It goes up at the following year by 2-3.5%, whatever the case is. Where it gets a little bit tricky is with the triple net leases. So with this, you'll see it quite a bit. It'll literally be just NNN, right? So what that's going to stand for is your property taxes, your property insurance, and your common area maintenance, and for example, like snow removal or things of that nature. So where it gets tricky is you'll see an offer where it's like $12 a square foot plus $3 in triple nets. So what the landlord there is saying, yes, you're paying $12 for your rent. However, you're going to cover the property taxes for your portion, as well as your property insurance for your portion, as well as your maintenance. And usually they'll look at their maintenance number for the year and then back that down to a square footage price and then factor that in. And they'll charge the tenant for that. That typically will change from year to year on occasion. So sometimes it'll go up, sometimes it'll rarely go down, but sometimes it'll go down, but rarely will you see that price go down. So it makes it a little more difficult on the leasee standpoint. You're carrying a little bit more of the responsibility of building, and as far as like budgeting goes and stuff like that for small business, it gets a little tricky. From the landlord perspective, it's great. They're paying everything. Your tenant's paying everything. So it makes sense on that end. So, usually there's a give and take on that side of things.
Awesome. And that's some great info. I mean, I know that we all learned what a triple net lease was. Well, we had to memorize it for our exam. I don't think anybody's ever used it in residential. And Antonio, when you have that letter of intent, how do you know, or, for us as listing agents, we have a pre-approval, right, from a bank and things like that. So, any one of the three panelists, how do we know that that person is income, credit qualified to even lease the space and or purchase it? Andrew, do you mind tackling that one for us?
Sure. It's not quite the same where you get a letter, but you will get a letter of credit from the bank. And normally we'll have a relationship with the bankers and have that conversation with whoever they're using before just running out and, running around with these guys looking for $1 million properties. So it's not that far off, but it's not as similar to say, put the mortgage commitment letter in with the deal. So usually the brokers are doing the background before. It's a little less common to have a pre-approval letter in the actual deal though.
And then, we always hear SBA loans. I think we all know what that means, but can you talk about an SBA loan, how somebody could apply for one, get one? Again, we're trying to go as top level as possible, scratch the surface, and then we can clearly, at a later date, go deeper into that.
I personally try to run as quickly as possible if someone's trying to do an SBA loan.
And why is that though? I mean,
they take forever. They ask for every single detail. It is a great program, but it just takes way longer to get a deal done.
And for those that don't know, what is SBA loan, and kind of what does the acronym mean?
Small Business Association.
Boom, that's it. So an SBA loan, a lot of times, startup companies will have that, or I know that the girls we're working with for the salon are trying to get an SBA loan right now as well.
Yeah, in general, loans in commercial are much higher. 30% is a normal, 20% is somewhat. Trying to get a 10% is near impossible. The terms are also stretched way thinner. A typical term is going to be 10 years versus a mortgage going out 30 years. So you do need a lot more upfront capital.
Scott Crossroy. So like Rocket Mortgage for residential. I don't think it's like that. I think it's more or less like grants and things like that. I think that's the better correlation. So we have letter intent, we have the attorneys agree, we have everybody kind of in agreement. Now the process is starting. What our next step is after the attorneys agree upon it would be inspections. What is your form of inspections on the commercial side of things? I'm sure it's different buildings would need different things. A regular strip mall might need a different form of inspection than, let's say, an industrial space. But Jesse, what is the most common inspection process?
Yeah, so it really, in my experience so far, it's coming down to what the deal is. It's the cash deal. Because the cash deal, you can kind of get around some of these inspections a little bit because it's cash deal. They don't have to worry about banks coming in. If it's a mortgage company, it's going to ask for quite a bit more. You're going to ask for environmental, especially if it's an industrial property. You got to check out the environmental. You're going to do your phase ones and potentially phase two, depending on how that phase one comes back. So they're going to look at the usage.
You real quick. What is a phase one? What is the basis of phase one? And then how does it kind of increase to the phase two?
Right. So what they do, and Andrew, you might want to jump in case I miss anything here because it gets a little tricky. So the phase one is essentially looking at prior history of the building. Was there a printing press in there? Was it used as a mechanical shop? What kind of oils and chemicals might have seeped into the ground and potentially contaminated the ground? Can you redevelop on that site? Or is it one of those things where, yes, there's a lot of contaminants in this ground and you cannot develop it, but you can still use the building just fine. Nobody's going to get hurt. So it's essentially they're going to potentially come in and I believe the phase two, they're going to do more core sampling and that kind of thing to see what's going on down there. And get more involved if they feel like they specifically need more information to satisfy that mortgage. Because a bank isn't going to write a mortgage if they're like, this is a contaminated property that they want to use for a restaurant or something like that. They're not going to allow that to happen. They're going to want to get into the weeds of this building to figure out what's going on there and what their liability will be.
Andrew, how do you do?
He did very well. Yeah. So phase one is, very comprehensive, history of the property. Phase two is the actual bore samples, as Jesse mentioned. Sometimes there's tanks in the ground that they actually, will test for. Even though in past the tanks may be, decommissioned and signed off with DEC, some still want to test that and just confirm those results. I personally have a property right now where there was a dry cleaner about half a block away. 30 years ago, this dry cleaner was there. And for those that don't know, dry cleaners are awful polluters. There was a spill and there's concern that because of we're downstream, the property is downstream, that the contaminants are in the soil on the property that we have. So we are now waiting to agree for a phase two. What scares most owners to do a phase two, if something is found, they must report it to DEC, and then it's on the owners to clean up, ultimately. Wow. So a lot of owners are a little hesitant to do a phase two, which we get a lot of pushback in our industry as well, because you never know what's in the ground. So.
And who requires the phase one or phase two? Would that be the bank that would require it? And then I know you said there's a lot of pushback for a phase two. Is there a way that you can skate around that? Or is the bank always going to say, nope, we need to do this?
Some banks are a little bit more hardcore with their phase ones, but in general, if a phase one in their summary requests or suggests that you get a phase two for certain areas, then it automatically is going to trigger a phase two for the bank. So they're going to require that a phase two be done.
Okay. I think we're all getting involved with the inspections now. And is there a list of inspectors? So for us, we have a list of residential inspectors. It seems like there's been a huge influx of inspectors over the last few months. Is there or are there a group of inspectors that solely do commercial when it comes to the inspections, and who would carry out the phase two? Who does the samples? For us, if we have a well, we take a sample, send it to the lab per the inspector. How does that look, and what does that look like?
Yeah, so different engineers will do the phase one and phase two. As far as inspectors, general building inspectors, that they're separate from the environmental inspectors. Okay. But there are a lot of home inspectors that do commercial as well. It's very similar. If you have a multi-story office or industrial building or retail where you have elevators, you're going to have somebody come into that specifically knows elevators. So as you peel the onion back, there may be, specialized fields where you have to call people in.
Yeah, and same for us, you might have a general inspector flag the chimney, and then you have to bring a mason in for a more thorough evaluation. Yep. Stanley asks, who pays for the inspections?
The buyer. Unless you negotiate it in, but it's usually always on the buyer. Or in some cases, a leasee. So if there are some where a landlord may require that, let's use a gas station as an example. So a gas station land leases a property for 99 years. The tenant, the gas station user, is going to want to make sure that property is clean beforehand, because they're going to have to convert that property back to just land at the end, which most likely they're going to have some contaminants, but they're still going to have to bring it back and do an environmental after they leave and make sure that site is clean.
Gotcha. All right. And then Rachel asked the pricing of the inspections, I'd imagine. Like, how much does that cost? I mean, we have our range of prices for inspections. I mean, are we looking at, a few $1,000s for the phase two? Because the samples, the lab, and everything.
Yeah, I mean, the general inspections can be anywhere. It depends on the product, the size of it. For a small warehouse, you're probably $1,500 for, again, a small warehouse. If you get into the environmental, we're looking at an environmental on one building in Schenectady. The phase one cost them $35,000. The phase two, which they're about to do, is going to be $85,000.
Wait, can you go back real quick? just I just want to make sure I heard it correctly and everybody else heard it.
I mean, that's on a multi-million-dollar property, but so it can get up there very quickly. If you get into a phase two boring samples, that gets up there.
You're talking about having skin in the game.
Yeah.
So after, let's say the phase one is satisfied, the phase two is satisfied, everything is ready to rock and roll. What is the next step? I mean, for us, once inspections are complete, then we go on to the appraisal. So is there an appraisal process? Obviously, if it's cash, do they need an appraisal? Should they get an appraisal? Or is the bank requiring that? And how does that work?
Jesse's got a good one on that one.
Yeah, so the appraisals will happen, same as residential. You're going to come in, you're going to make sure that the building appraises for what you're negotiating in and what you're buying. So we see this quite a bit as far as contingencies within that letter of intent, within that contract. One of those contingencies that we're dealing with on one of our warehouses, listen, it needs to get appraised at X dollars. And if it doesn't, the deal falls apart. So it's like, you do have to have those come in, those inspections taken care of you.
And how long
has had a unique deal just
Very
recently,
unique deal.
where basically the buyer was calling out the seller saying it's not going to appraise for this. So actually, Jesse and I are working on this together. We negotiated in the deal that they have to get a MAI certified appraiser to do the appraisal, and if it comes back lower than our purchase price, within $15,000, the seller was willing to drop it down to whatever the appraised price was.
Oh, wow.
So ultimately, we had to do this. Luckily for us, it came back higher.
We were nervous.
sometimes, to negotiate it out is to do an appraisal before, and then they have to get a separate appraisal through the bank as well.
And what is the cost roughly of an appraisal?
Those can be all over as well. It depends on commercial. They do get up there. If you get an MAI certified appraisal, even a smaller building. I don't know what MAI stands for, but it's basically the doctorate of appraisers. Okay. There's very few around here. It's a very challenging appraisal license to get. So that's why I know a few of them, and they kind of geek out on being an MAI. So I'm not a pro. I don't know what it stands for, but I know it's good.
Master of the Appraisal Institute.
Okay, thank you, Joanne.
I do geek out on her.
My first broker was an MAI, so.
Sometimes people like the acronyms and designations, and now you know what it is, Andrew, as moving forward. So you're learning something from this course.
That's right. But I know they cost, they're usually at least $5,000.
So as you all can see, the commercial side of things does get quite pricey. The last thing we want to do as residential agents is kind of walk up that slippery slope and say, oh yeah, an appraisal, that's usually about $350 to $450, depending on your bank. And then all of a sudden it turns into $5,000, right? And a lot of what we're trying to do today is, show the differences between commercial and residential. And Nicole Clark asked the question, do letters of intent typically have a time frame within which any such phase 1 or 2 inspections need to be done and hurdles passed? So for residential, we have our contingency dates, we have attorney approval dates, inspection dates, the whole 9 yards. In your letter of intent, does it have those dates? Because your process is a lot longer than ours. So are there specific timeframes that you have to adhere to?
Yes. Yes, there is. Everything is spelled out in the letter of intent. Usually in the letter of intent, there's what's called a due diligence period. And usually within that due diligence period, the buyer will have, let's say, 180 days to do any sort of site assessment work, environmental testing. On top of that, there'll also be a certain amount of days for governmental approvals. Everything that's going to be in the purchase and sale agreement as far as time frames go in terms should be in the letter of intent as well.
Right.
And in that, you're also going to see in that due diligence process, if you're buying like a multifamily mixed-use building or something like that, that's especially if it's fully leased and occupied, you're going to have some due diligence time for those attorneys to go through those leases and make sure everything checks out.
I can share one real quick. It's not the most detailed, but it's one that Antonio and I were just working on. And everybody wants to kind of.
And while you're throwing that up, for the letter of intent, does it show the purpose of use? Let's say I want to have an alpaca farm in Colony, and I put my letter of intent. I go through all the processes, but then Colony says no alpacas allowed.
Yeah, you have to have that in there. I mean, this is for a renewal. Can everyone see this?
Yep.
Not wrong. Okay. So this is for a renewal, so it's not quite as detailed as what we would typically have in a letter of intent, but it still shows basically everything. It's almost a contract, only it's non-binding. So you're putting the property, the tenant, the landlord, premises, lease terms, what our base rent is, tenant improvements. That's the biggest challenge, is negotiating tenant improvements. And really is knowing what landlords are willing to put more into buildings than others are. And that's just part of being in the business long enough.
And is this form relatively, and I don't want to use the term generic because it has a negative connotation, but is this more or less like plug and play, like, right, the subject property, like all those lines are going to remain the same. You just add in the features of the
Basically,
contract.
yeah. That, and again, that was a very simple because it's a renewal. So if you were to go in fresh, you'd have a lot more details in there. To your point, you'd have what you're specifically using the building for. This is a tenant that's been in the building for 6 years now, so we don't need to specify those items, but it still has the bullet points of the general information.
All right. And let's say you're all working with somebody who wants to lease a building and it comes time. At what point should you have your client, talk to the town to see if they can even have the business that they want approved in that location? Should they do that before letter of intent,
Yes.
during, like, how does that work?
Before. And that's on the brokers. That's on us to actually look that up and make sure that the zoning it's an allowed use. And if it's not an allowed use, then yeah, you need to call and see what you can do. Will it be, could it get changed? But you can go on every municipality and look at their zoning map, find the building, what are the allowed uses, can you use that? But yeah, then you have to make the phone call and confirm it.
And let's kind of go down and pivot into that world of zoning. What are the most common zones and zoning? I know industrial, commercial, if you could speak on the most common ones and what they mean for just the regular clients.
And you two want to jump on?
Sure. So it's really dependent on what municipality you're in. It differs so much. I mean, if you're in Galway, the commercial district is going to be much smaller than if you're in Colony. But generally you'll see like a general business district, which allows retail. You'll see an industrial district that allows manufacturing and warehousing. You'll also see agricultural districts where it really doesn't allow anything. That's kind of the worst thing that we run into. If buying like the property in an agricultural district, we're kind of screwed. But yeah, it's really dependent on the municipality. They're different in each one.
Appreciate the info. And would you go to the town meeting for approvals with your client, or is that something they just kind of do on their own, or do you go with them to help prepare them for that?
We certainly can. I know Andrew's been to quite a few. I know, like, just from speaking with him, he's gone to a lot. I haven't had that opportunity yet. Looking forward to doing it. But at the moment, I know Andrew could probably speak a little bit more to that.
Yeah, it gives you a great opportunity to, be there, not just for your client, but for the other owners. I can give you a specific case where I was trying to get a dog daycare approved, and the seller's representative was not at the meetings. There was a point where I needed to stand up and express what needed to be done and why this should be allowed. The buyers at that point turned around after the meeting and thanked me, and I gave them my card, and it just showed the next step that we take.
So that, in a sense, is the differentiating that we do as residential agents, where we show up to the inspection, right? You show up to that, and that could be a referral source from you because not every broker is created equally, and you went above and beyond for your client. So that's kudos to you, and hopefully that turns into something. And Brian asked a question about residential agents dipping their toes into commercial, not knowing the specifics, and are there any legal actions against them for dropping the ball? I mean, have you heard any horror stories? Not to scare anybody, but quickly,
Yeah, I mean, you can be turned in for a disservice to your client. If it's technically against your license if that's not. I forgot the actual term. I'm having a brain fart, but.
Well, it's an ethics problem and a license problem, right? And I just want to point out, Andrew, I'm not in any way saying that, responsible residential agents are going to go misleading anyone. I don't mean that at all. I just mean, a lot of a thread of what you've been talking about is, you three have alluded to what types of things are incumbent upon the commercial realtors on each side of the deal. And if we don't know that, if we're not familiar with that, I mean, that's could be a landmine, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and to piggyback on that, Brian, I think it goes both ways. I've had friends, family reach out to me being like, hey, can you help me buy my house? And we're looking to stop renting and buy a house. I'm like, I have no idea how to do residential. I'm like, no, let me farm that out because I don't even want that liability,
Mm-hmm.
because it's intimidating to me. So I'd rather give it to the professionals, people who know what they're doing in that field. So typically I'll end up
just quick follow-up. I mean, you must see this, and especially Andrew, from your perspective, you must see some commercial agents, because like residential companies, not all commercial agents are going to be, and brokers and brokerages are going to be created equal, right? So the training and the support and the mentorship that you provide, I assume, doesn't happen everywhere. Do you see less qualified commercial agents stepping in it as well?
Newer agents, yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, there's certain brokerage firms that just throw mud at the wall and just let them go, and usually most of them drop off because they didn't get proper training.
Okay. I had the reason for the question, and then I'll go back on mute, is that I had a recruit sit with me about a week and a half ago from a very big competitor, and he told me he was a commercial agent, and I think Brianna was probably 2 weeks ago now, and Brianna looked up his history, and he had done two things with a commercial agent that were multi-unit, but the rest of it was residential, but he was coming forward as this hybrid. And it's hard to call yourself. We have to be careful of labels, I think. So
absolutely,
staying in our lane. Thank you.
Yep.
And we're going to chat at the end of this of, if anybody does have any potential commercial clients or ways to find commercial clients, and the best way to, as Jesse said, farm that out to our commercial team, all while getting paid, right? Last thing you want to do is farm it out and not get paid. But you can have a referral source and a stream of income by directing it to the professionals in the business. Pro forma. And before we get to pro forma, we got 15 minutes left, which is more than enough time. After the appraisal's done, how much longer? Again, I know that commercial, there's some deals that take 5 years to close, but is there another significant step after appraisal instead of just waiting for the red tape?
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it. Some deals take even longer. I've been working on, and now Jesse is actually working on this land deal down in Hudson. We've been waiting for the sewer line to come to the site for the last 5 years, which I helped lobby for the sewer to be brought to the site, actually along the site. Finally, the owner sent me a picture the other day of all the sewer lines that were dropped off at the site. So every single developer that we've had has been waiting for the sewer line to go in. So yes, there are longer term hurdles sometimes. And the municipalities, I had a Cumberland's Farm deal in Rotterdam that took, I think, just over 3 years to get approved. And it's just, sometimes things go quick, and it can be a 30-day, 60-day close. But for the most part, especially land deals, it could be multiple years to get approved.
So the whole premise and the whole theme is to just be like water and be able to flow and kind of know every challenge, or if not know the challenge, know how to overcome the challenge based on past experiences and past situations, correct?
Basically, yeah.
Awesome. And let's chat about pro forma real quick. And for those that don't know, pro forma is essentially an analysis of the financials. The project projects financial returns. Yes. Never mind, that was a private message. But can you discuss pro forma? Do you have a one that you could share with us, just a kind of a sample?
Yeah, I actually put together a sample pro forma. I'll share my screen.
Almost like this was prepared.
Yeah, exactly.
No idea.
Well, you look at that.
So this is basically what a pro forma looks like. Essentially, you're taking property incomes, taking out all the expenses, and getting your net operating income. So this is just a fake property, 123 Sample Street in Saratoga. Built in 2015, 25 units. It's priced at $4 million, $160,000 per unit. Have a little financing scenario in all my pro formas. So I have a 25% down payment, which is $1 million. Loan to value 75%. Interest rate 3.5%. Amortization period 30 years. I have a formula in here that runs monthly debt service, and then you got your yearly debt service as well. I also have in here a rent roll, which this is occupied by the entire Clark family.
Nice. Although there's no E at the end of my name, but
whoops.
all right.
So a mix of 2 bedrooms, studio, and 1 bedroom. So gross monthly rental income on this is $45,550 per month, $546,600 per year. Also within this income section, you'd add in any other income that you get off the property, like laundry. If tenants were paying for parking spaces, things of that nature, you'd come up with this number, total gross income. And then this is a percentage that a lot of brokers, even commercial brokers, tend to leave out, but it's absolutely necessary, and every investor is going to want to see a vacancy contingency implemented into the pro forma. The rule of thumb is to use 5%. So you deduct that 5%, and then you get your effective gross income.
And that's just if you have turnover, if somebody's moving out, you have a month left that you have to get it ready to re-rent, correct?
Exactly. Yep. So you're left with your effective gross income, and then you're going to take all your expenses out. This is built in 2015. So maintenance would just be like fixing doors and just minor cosmetic stuff, newer buildings. So I put a 2% contingency on that. Management is if you have a property manager running it, I have 5%. And then budget for replacements is also something that a lot of people leave out, but definitely needs to be included. 3%, just the budget if a boiler breaks or anything substantial goes wrong with the property. Obviously, then the rest of just taxes, insurance, garbage, lawn care. So the total expense here is $93,467, leaving us a net operating income of $425,803. So this is an 11% cap rate.
And what is, layman's terms, what is cap rate?
Cap rate is really just the return on your investment. So they're getting 11% on their $4 million investment. It's really probably one of the largest things that investors look at in regard to qualifying an investment property. So this is an 11 cap, which is absolutely absurd in regard to, especially in Saratoga. This would probably last 2 hours on the market. And then I have a little, another figure, cash on cash return is also a huge figure that investors will look at. And this is basically, they're putting in, where's my down payment? $1 million. What is their return on that $1 million? 26% is very good. Usually investment clients are looking above 12%, anywhere above 12% to engage on an investment property.
So your sample property is a home run. It's a slam dunk.
Home run.
So if you were to list this with everything said, you would list it a lot higher than the 4 million, obviously, correct?
Absolutely. I think this would probably be listed closer to like a 6 cap.
Okay. That's awesome information. And, I'm sure you're going to get tons of emails because I'm going to give all of your information to everybody in this phone call. And they might actually ask you how to do a pro forma, and maybe even sit down with you. It is 11:52. I do want to leave the floor to Andrew because I know that when we talked about this, and Brian alluded to it earlier about all the different nuances and everything, I want you to speak to the 24, 25 remaining people, how they can kind of get into commercial without being in commercial, right? Because there's so many different variables that I don't feel comfortable doing them. And, you know, I've been in the business for a number of years. So Andrew, the floor is yours. You got to unmute yourself so we can hear your sweet and supple voice.
Sorry.
There it is.
Like, why is he talking over me? So yeah, I mean, if you can generate, you know, even 10% of your yearly income, which really can be very easy. You know, I'm going to throw up a chart here that I've been sort of using for the past few months, both in-house and we have a couple of referrals from outside brokers as well. It seems to be a pretty good hit, and it kind of goes through a few different scenarios. Where's my screen share? There it is. So this could be as simple as it's geared up in a few different levels. What is your, you know, what is your relationship with the person that you're talking to? And we had, you know, recently a Berkshire Hathaway agent that reached out and said, I just drove by, you know, a commercial building. It's had a for sale by owner on it. I don't know them. I don't want to do anything with this, but I thought I'd let you know. And ultimately, they didn't even really want a referral, but we're going to honor a referral on this. So at a bare minimum, you'd be at a stage one, not knowing them. You're just giving us a call saying, you know, I don't know them. Here's a for sale by owner, just giving us a tip, basically. So you're automatically going to be at a 5% or up to a 5% level. It depends on, you know, if it's basically going to be 5%, but there is that wiggle room of if it's, you know, 3 hours away from here or 2 hours away from here, and, you know, they have no connection whatsoever, and there's that much more legwork. But again, that would be upfront. We would talk about this. Then it goes down the different ways of how you know the client. Antonio and I are working with an agent right now that they do all their family business. She does all their residential business, but knows nothing about commercial. So depending on where that tier is, she's probably in between you know, these two tiers. So she's going to automatically start out with 20% or 15% just by referring that business. Now, she also wants to kind of remain in the business and learn a little bit. So depending on what she ultimately does is this part down here. So she can remain on all emails, come to showings, do whatever, but it depends on the amount of work that she's putting into the deal. If one of your agents now is kind of does some commercial and has an understanding and is going to do some of the work, you may split it if it's equally, you know, you're equally doing the work. So that agent right there could be at 40% of that deal by doing, you know, equal work and just quickly referring it. But all the marketing expenses are on us. So you have those cost savings. Or it could be as simple as, again, let's go to, you're just tossing it out to us. You're giving it to us. You show up a couple of times, you're at 10% of that deal. For someone that you have no idea, you're just basically passing it along. So this is kind of a chart to show you different deals, and it goes based on the total commission as well. And it's an A plus B. So this is the section, you know, A plus B, and that would equal your total split.
Wow. So, I mean, basically, just for picking up a phone, I mean, I know that Steph Kuba talks about it a lot of times when we do relocation to different states. That could be another referral source, another revenue stream for you. You know, obviously with Jesse, Antonio, and Andrew, tremendously bright professional folks, and you know that your clients could be in good hands with them. Anybody have any final questions? If you do, put it in the chat. My last question.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say something real quick. So, Andrew, if somebody's, well, we're not at many parties these days, but if somebody hears something about something going on in the commercial world, what's the best thing to do? Shoot you an email, text? I mean,
Yeah, shoot me an email. I always find that email is the best path because then that also protects you. It protects both sides of it. I'm very upfront with this form. I make sure that you agree to the form via email beforehand so that all parties understand how they're going to be paid on this. And as long as everyone agrees, sometimes there is some gray areas as well. Is no, I'm going to be there every single step of the way. We can negotiate if it's for certain instances.
Right.
But as a whole, it's a fairly good chart that's been working so far.
And I love, the idea of creating these relationships because it goes back and forth. Andrew and Jesse and Antonio, they hear of residential things going on. They'll be reaching out to you to discuss those. So that's terrific. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, it goes both ways. We know we work with business owners that are looking for houses or, and vice versa. If you're at, the Super Bowl party this weekend, ask your buddies who's in charge of their real estate. Where's their office? Most people that are in offices, they're leasing them. They don't own them. A simple phone call. Hey, I got a great guy that I want to, hook you guys up with, or, can we get in touch with the CEO and, just create a relationship. And maybe it doesn't pay off now, but 3 years from now, when their lease expires, if that relationship still moves forward, if they sign, how we get paid on leases is on the aggregate gross. So if it's a 5-year deal, let's just say for quick math, it's, $100,000 aggregate gross lease per year. If they sign a 10-year deal, that's $1 million deal that we get paid on. So leases add up very quickly, and everyone knows people that work in offices and, or retail shops or wherever.
I wish the residential rentals was aggregate as well on our leases, but it's not. It's like a 30% of the first month, so you don't have to put gas in your car.
Yeah.
Andrew, I have a question. It's Pam York up in Lake George.
Hi, Pam.
Down where you are, what's the relationship between residential commissions and commercial commissions in a general sense?
Commercial is typically higher. I believe you're asking for the total listing commission.
Yeah.
Okay. So commercial is a bit higher. We do have more overhead with, the CoStar, LoopNet, Crexy, other, commercial platforms. But we go anywhere from 3% for a multi-million-dollar deal, all the way up to 12%. It depends on how much legwork is going into it. A lot of land deals might be, 8, 10, 12%, depending on how much time we have to put into them. But it's somewhat of a sliding scale based on the total price.
Yep, that's kind of what we do up here. I was just wondering if it was similar down your way.
Yeah, I mean, we cover all the way up to, we basically, I'm trying to expand into Plattsburgh, go out west to Binghamton. Jesse's from Binghamton. So we're trying to, space out quite a bit further. So Lake George is not that far at all as far as commercial deals work.
All right. Thank you.
Yep.
Does anybody have any final questions or final parting words? No.
Hey, Andrew, the new spaces that you're at, that people can stop by if they're in the area?
Yeah. We have a new office right now. It's 1730. Let me confirm.
1735.
The new sign will be up soon. You'll see it. It's right across the street from the ShopRite Center on Central Ave. Feel free. I love to even open up. We have plenty of space here. If anyone wants to pop over and work for a few hours or needs a printer, please feel free to stop by. The door is locked, so ring the doorbell, or shoot me a text if you're here. And I'm glad to let anyone work from here.
Awesome. And the last final thought, and I mentioned this earlier at my office meeting in Niskayuna, but through the pandemic, through everything, we took a really large company of about 300 agents, and we have now kind of boiled it down to do these Zoom meetings. And in a sense, it made us a tighter group, a smaller group where we can all learn from each other. We have that each one teach one mentality. I know we were joking earlier, but Andrew's obviously not getting paid to do this. He's doing it because he genuinely cares about the well-being of all the agents and everything.
What?
Yeah, we'll talk about that later. Next week, I have two special guests that are in the industry, a sub part of the industry. So Phil Reese is going to be talking about everything mortgages, but with mortgages comes credit and credit repair. So we have Sean Moody joining us as well. And any questions you have about credit, how credit is, conducted, what goes into your FICO score, how to best help your friends, family that have low credit, different tips and tricks of what we can do. So with that being said, I do appreciate everybody joining. Thanks.
Brian, you did have one more question on that.
Oh, okay. One more question. Scott Cross, you just ruined my flow. I was in the zone.
Sorry. Rachel put on their hotel listing fee the same.
I'm sorry, wait, one more time.
Rachel put in the comments, hotel listing fee the same? Question mark.
Yeah, I mean, a hotel is going to be the same sliding scale based on the value of it. And if it's income generating, right now hotels are 2 years ago, hotels were trading at a different rate than they are now. Banks they won't touch hotels. So there's going to be a lot more legwork than there was a couple of years ago. So the commission rate has increased.
Jason, quick question. How many people do we have in the whole company, agents, and how many in the commercial?
The exact number, Andrew, what's the exact number with your team?
We have 13 and growing in the next week or so.
Yeah, we've got there's just under 300 licensed realtors with the company, Pam.
Okay, I like to share that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so really kind of, what I like most about these calls is, at the end of the day, we're all here to best represent the client. And I think with Berkshire Hathaway, that's like the number one thing we want to do, right? Is represent our client the best we can. And yes, commercial division, we're a small, tight group. Feel free to reach out to us at any time. We're more than happy to help you any way possible to get that deal done, and use this as a resource for sure. We want to make sure that we're representing Berkshire Hathaway best we can.
Maybe Jay could do a company-wide blast email of your 3 email addresses. I'm putting you on the spot, Jay.
Be happy to. Yeah.
Why not?
We'll get
Awesome.
do we want to throw up a number? Best way to get a hold of Andrew? If is that something you want to throw up, Andrew? Maybe you did.
Yeah. My cell is always best. I'll throw it in the chat.
We'll say Jesse and
Oh, right, Jesse and Antonio, they love it.
Oh yeah, call me anytime. I mean, come on, I got my phone here.
Andrew to do this. Andrew was like, no way.
Yeah, cell or email is really the best form because my phone kind of blows up all day, and if I get text messages, those sort of get lost on me as of recent. So email at least stays fresh and live. I'm not saying that I won't respond to a text, but I may look at it quick while I'm in a meeting and then forget that it was there. So it kind of trickles down the line. And then, 9:00 at night, I look at it and it's like, oh, I forgot to reply. So, email is kind of the best. Calls are fine, texts are fine, but I'm usually staring at my computer, a solid 6-7 hours a day. So an email is always prompt up on my screen.
And I'm just going to throw it in the little thing there. I think everyone's got it, but just in case. Perfect.
Awesome. Well, thanks again to our panelists, Andrew, Jesse.
Great job, everybody.
Thank you guys.
Thanks, Joanne, for the MAI acronym. And hope everybody has a great day, and I'll see you all next week.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks,
Good
everybody.
job.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. We appreciate it.
Thank you.